All right, everybody, welcome back to the Skillist podcast. I'm Brad Salon from the Root School.
Matt Corradino, Caribbean Earth Skills. Just back from the beach. Look at this rugged face, all sunburned.
Yeah. We
Yeah.
all feel really bad
I was
for
tracking.
you, Matt.
I was out there tracking.
Yeah, we feel
tracking all
terrible
day.
for you having to go to
what?
Isaac's Bay and hang out with
Sorry.
the coral and the fish.
Sorry. Dying coral.
Oh, man.
It's a hard place to love.
Yeah.
Good watching it but still beautiful. Definitely.
Have you seen any recover? Or is it all just going down?
You know, there's definitely recovery. There's been a lot of bleaching the last 2 years. The last 2 summers were really warm. The last summer was pretty warm. The summer before last, the water was so warm. Like, so warm. So there was a lot of bleaching, a lot last year, and there was some a good bit this year. There's still some alive, you know. It's tough. There's still fish. There's definitely fish. I saw tons of fish today. Ooh, there were some huge parrotfish. It was beautiful. Big old ray.
Nice.
Yep. Lots of tracking.
Yeah.
Conch tracking.
What do you track on the beach there?
Oh, well, you know, out there, mongoose mostly, because they're all gone from this end. Don't have as
yeah, 'cause
many.
there's no snakes
I mean, there's
out
deer
there.
to track. Yeah, and there's deer out there, but I didn't see any deer tracks today because of where we were at. You kind of have to get, you know, pretty high up to see the deer out there. It's pretty freaking hot on the beach. They're not usually down there.
Right.
Not out there.
Word. All right. Well, so the subject this week is tracking. I don't believe in tracking.
I was going to say the same thing. What is tracking? You can't
What is
say
this
that. You're not allowed to say
hocus
that. No,
pocus?
you're not allowed to say that. Because I'm supposed to say that.
I thought it was my job
Tracking.
to say that.
No, what? No. You don't get that.
Um,
Hell no. That's mine. Tracking.
So, I will say tracking is one of those things, though, that, like, gets misconstrued, or it's either played up too big
sucks.
or
Tracking
not
sucks.
played up enough. Well, and the truth of
So
learning tracking
impossibly
is
hard.
it's a language, you know, that requires study like any language.
Yeah, I guess my kids will be way better at it than I will.
Right, they'll be hopefully like fluent in it in a way of growing up with it.
In a real way.
Right.
Yeah, I thought you were going to be talking about the science of it, and I was ready to punch holes in that whole plan right there. Teaching it like
I
a
would argue that
science teaching it like a science is it's tough.
I would argue that it's where science comes from.
Well, yeah, of course, right? It has to be. You see the thing, you form a hypothesis, you try to prove
Right.
it from observation or making it.
Right. And that, like, also there's one of my biggest lessons of learning tracking over time is that I want a lot of data before I make a call. You know, people will send me a picture on a cell phone
So
of
much.
one track and ask me what it is, and I'm always asking for more data. You know, or even if I find a
2 tracks,
set of tracks
4.
going across the trail, I want to look at 20 of them before I say what I think it is.
Yeah.
Because
I don't
I've
want to
been
say what I
tricked.
think it is. I just want to think what I think it is. Well,
Sure.
I think if you spend a whole bunch of time tracking, you're always tricked because you're tricking yourself most of the time.
I mean,
You know?
I feel
You got to tell a
pretty
story,
confident
right? You got to
with-
tell a story with what you're seeing, and you got to wonder about the story you're telling,
Sure.
you know?
There are some things I feel pretty confident about. Clear print ID, identifying a gate.
Yeah.
There's certain tells for different animals of gender or sex that I feel are pretty reliable. And then there's some things that I feel are very challenging. Aging, I've seen track aging be
so important.
very elusive.
It's the most
Fresh,
it's the
not
most
fresh.
important thing.
is useful.
Yeah, fresh, not fresh, not bad. But
and
still,
then,
I mean,
did this occur before or after a weather event? Useful. But then I've seen tracks. We have this sandy spot where we do a lot of, leave a track at 9 a.m. when the class starts, leave a track at noon, leave a track at 6 p.m., repeat the same thing the next day. And consistently, the tracks left at noon look older than the tracks left at 9 a.m. And it's a sandy spot that's in the sun. But at 9 a.m., the dew is still sitting on the sand, and so it leaves a nice clear track. At noon, the sand is dry, and so the track falls apart pretty much as soon as your foot comes out of it. And so you get this thing where consistently the fresher tracks look older, or landscape distortion around what's in the wind or the sun or not, and how long the tracks take to degrade. Just it can
how
be
much
real.
wind there is, how much sun there is. I've seen, just enough wind, a track that's like pretty fresh, completely disappear. Just because of like a little bit more wind in a sandy soil like that. Yeah, I mean, the hard part about tracking is so hard, so freaking hard. No matter how good you get, there's always going to be another track that you can't see, or you just can't see it, right? The animal stepped there somewhere in that area, like you might have a clear print that's further over, and this track is just in this impossible spot, right? But then you can't just stick to those sandy areas. Things like sandy areas are great because they change so much when you're following a track in a sandy area. Like they're so, if you make a track in a place that's in a soil that's clay that holds the track, and it's got enough moisture, that track's not gonna go through so many changes, especially if it's harder clay. But in sand, it's always going to be going through changes completely. So areas like that are really easy to get pretty good in aging. Like you're saying, like from the morning to the afternoon, that's huge to know that difference. But when where you're practicing it at, it changes more. You learn faster. But then where you're actually using it, it's not changing as much. If I'm actually trying to use that information, how old the track is, right? This track is X old, and I need to meet this animal at this time or find this person at this time, right? Like, so I'm going to have to follow those tracks into somewhere that doesn't look like what I just aged them on a minute ago, or learned to age on.
Right.
That's why, man, tracking sucks.
I don't know. I love it, but yeah, I
so
get what
hard.
you're saying.
I love it
is hard.
too.
It is.
I love it
is
too.
an ass whooping. But
I love it too.
I guess what I'll have to. What I
always question myself. I always question myself. That's why it's hard. I always question myself. No matter what method I'm using to learn and to get better at it, I'm always going to question myself. No matter what. Like, it can even be clear, unless it's so obvious and I pick up the same track. But in an area where there's a lot of tracks and like the animal passes by with more regularity. It's like following that one.
So I think part of that is, one, is the grandiosity of the way that Tom Brown Jr. teaches or taught tracking, I think is a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it pushes students to find, newer and greater levels of it. And on the other hand, it presupposes this like grandmaster level that you can get to that is, I've never seen to be attainable. I've never seen anyone other than him, and even that, he didn't show that off. So I've never seen the levels he talked to be attained. And so for me, my journey of tracking, because I started learning it there, has largely been a function of trying to find the edges of it and find out what can I consistently do in a way that's reliable, so that I learned first of all, I had to learn to establish what are my goals with tracking. In the case of hunting, there's a really specific goal of being able to tell what animal is where when. In the case of finding a missing person or a dog that ran off, the goal is trailing something to it. In the case of doing a landscape survey, can I walk through a landscape and have a good sense of the animals that are there and their population density. Those became goals, and then I learned in what conditions is it reasonable for me to assume I can achieve those goals if I put in the work to learning those things. And then I also learned where the boundaries of that are. So, with trailing, there are certain conditions in which my ability to trail falls apart, and then there are certain conditions in which I feel relatively confident in my ability to trail.
Why does it fall apart? What is it that makes it fall apart?
Really incredibly dry conditions for a very long period of time make trailing in the debris here very challenging because everything looks the same age. So you might be on a trail and following a disturbance and it's going well, but as soon as you hit interference tracks, trying to tell the difference between those track sets through aging is really difficult because everything just looks old and dusty and aged.
What if you... So Carmen and I had this tracking case. We were called by a family member of somebody who had gone missing and asked us if we would go over to St. Thomas and do some tracking. And I've always been more using my tracking for hunting and for telling what the animals are doing out in nature, and haven't spent any time, tracking people appreciably, other than when people are out in the woods or even, just like looking at the ground all the time like I tend to do, just to try to be practicing that. So definitely some human tracking, and we went out there and I couldn't just be like, oh, well, damn, it aged such and such an amount over 3 days. There's no way I'm going to be able to track through here. Like, I'm done, No, I didn't have that option. I had to, go and find that person. And, so there were tracks that were 3 days or more or old, right? It was a very, very hard substrate, packed clayey sand on the very top, but the faintest amount of sand on hard clayey soil. And really, the fresh tracks, you could see them in places, just on the edge of where my sandals were, or where my tread had pushed in just enough to see it, but it was hard enough to see tracks. And then I found a spot where there were tracks that were 3 days old, but it's just because it's 3 days old doesn't mean it's his tracks, right? And I'm following, and I got to this point, and we just decided to do more of a grid pattern. Okay, let's go out to the very edges of where people were and just do this grid, right? So that we're not getting too far down one road that we're not 100% sure of because that person wasn't there. And what it got us into was just relying on that grid pattern and overlooking places that didn't make any sense that he would go, right? And the only place that I felt strongly that he probably went, the one place where I saw tracks that were in the range of the time that he was there, that were, I couldn't know that it was his, right? But I would get to these places, follow them to a spot where it's why, there's no reason why this person would ever go there. And yeah, it was only my feelings that were right. The grid pattern, none of it worked. He ended up he was found by dogs the next day in the one place that we hadn't checked that we were going to go check in the morning. And it was in a place that I went through one place, right, where I saw tracks and I was no, I see tracks here. I see them. I'm going through this incredible thicket, incredible, stupid thicket, right? And I was all right, that was pure foolishness. Was I even seeing his tracks in there, right? Was I even seeing tracks in there? It's hard enough to track, period. And I just wrote those areas off, and that's where he was. He crawled into he died in a super thick, insanely thick area. I had to crawl through. That's how thick it was where he was, right? So, So I think feeling has to be involved in it sometime, right? And I think yeah.
I mean, you're jumping to
it's a big part of tracking.
Yes, it is.
So the scientific, right? The scientific was not serving in that situation, right? Just following logic. Okay, I don't want to say scientific because that's a stupid thing to say, right?
Well,
just
I was going to say, was it really logical?
Just following,
though,
it wasn't.
Because you made an assumption, and everything I know about search and rescue is you work in absolutes, so you try not to make assumptions.
Yeah.
Because you don't know until unless you're holding something in your hand, you don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I don't disagree with checking out your gut feelings. I don't know how much I would base everything on that if I had limited resources. And I think in the circumstance that I was talking about before, in terms of really hard tracking conditions, there are things I would do to work around, given a case where it wasn't just me trying to trail the deer on my land and see how close I could get to them. Looking at track traps. Where do I know that tracks are going to be more visible on steep hills, in wet areas, going through really thick foliage? Those are areas I might spend more time as opposed to flat, deciduous debris that's all curled up because it's so dry.
But I like to start at those track traps and go into the super difficult soil just because of that situation, which was nothing I was ever planning on ever doing a single time in my whole life. Right? That wasn't something that I was ever aspiring to. But I really wanted to do a good job. You know what I mean? I have somebody's life right there.
Right.
I really wanted to do a good job. And
I think that comes down
to
the way.
So I guess what I'm saying is the way that I practice tracking, where I wanted to always be absolutely sure, right? Didn't serve me in that moment. So maybe there's more a broader way to learn, which is why really it's like raising your kids with tracking. So like you said, they're learning a language very young. If they start that very, very young, then it means it's something entirely different to them, like more alive, the chance to see more, because the tracks in places that you wouldn't expect to even see any tracks can make tracks and last a long time, right? But how am I gonna learn from going to that place every single time? You need to spend a lot of time in the clear areas, like completely clear, following clear prints as long as you possibly can, for sure. But I also think you need to spend some time looking at impossible next tracks, where it's like, they stepped here, you have all the tracks leading up to there, you have a few tracks further down that are clear, they stepped in here, no matter how hard you look, you can't see the damn track, but it's there, right? Just, there's only so much time people want to beat their heads against the ground looking for that one track, right? I know I wasn't like that. I mean, I can be like that, right? But...
yeah, man. So there's a few things I guess I would respond to. One, I think it's important for anyone who's starting out with tracking or who's interested in tracking to set their goals as far as what are they interested in learning and getting out of tracking, and not get distracted by all the different things there are to learn in tracking. Really, I think all the disciplines play into each other, but I think where I have seen a lot of people fail or not get good at tracking is because they didn't put in the dirt time or the groundwork to learn the basics. I don't think spending tons of time on compression tracking makes sense if you can't from memory draw the front and rear track of all the animals in your bioregion. Because if you're looking for a skunk track that's in debris but you don't know what a fucking skunk track looks like, that's silly. And so what you're talking about in terms of following a trail from an easy substrate to a hard substrate, I think is absolutely valid. And that is, to me, how you learn how to trail in harder substrates. It's the 10,000 aha moments when you force yourself to find the next track and you notice some subtle difference that tells you where that next disturbance is. Your brain logs that as, oh, that's a possible disturbance, and then you match it to the gait, and then you confirm it by continuing to trail it until the animal hits an easier substrate again. I think that's super valid. Or one of the more valuable things, Kevin Reeves did this with me when I was an intern, was the 10-step drill, where you leave 10 steps. The first 3 steps, you put a popsicle in your heel. Then you leave 7 more tracks, and you put one in the 10th, a popsicle stick in the 10th track. And so now you have 3 tracks to study that you know for sure where they are. Then you have 6 tracks that are a question mark, and a 10th track that is your confirmation. And that drill, I do that drill all the time personally. I do it in new substrates. If I have time when I am going to an area where I'm going to be doing a lot of tracking, I'll do that drill for myself. And then for students who want to learn trailing, I hammer that drill. It's a primary way of learning to see disturbance in a substrate. And even as that substrate changes in different weather conditions, it's valid to do that drill, in different wetnesses of grass, different wetnesses of leaves, different wetnesses or dryness of every substrate will affect that drill.
And you can't stop doing it either.
No, it's
you can't.
It's a perishable skill.
It definitely is. It's something that you pick back up for sure, but only through going through the drills again. Only going through right back to basics. Like, oh wait, let me look at my gait patterns again and make sure. Like if you haven't been tracking, right. I haven't been tracking a specific animal. And you're talking about like learning one thing at one of the disciplines of tracking, even just one animal, just following one type of animal and just like focusing really hard on that animal in all the places that it goes, like really get to know that one animal. And, that can be a totally amazing way to learn tracking. You get to see it in easy places, in hard places, in high traffic areas, and low traffic areas,
Right.
It's hard because you want to know everything that's going on in the woods.
Well, right. I think people they try and jump ahead to the fanciest or most, mind-boggling tracking. But I think...
Uh-oh. What are we talking about? What are we boggling minds with?
We'll get to that, but I think
look, he's trying to avoid the argument
with those basics. Oh no, we'll get there. But I think we both agree if you haven't put your time in the field guides and tried to learn the basics, that you really
have to.
You're doing yourself a disservice.
You have to do it. You have to keep doing it. You have to keep doing it. Even if you get to the most mystifying, crazy thing, you still have to keep doing it. You can't just
You don't learn a ton from being just completely confused and having no successes.
No, of course not. Of course not. That's why you study everything.
Right. And then I agree with you, you're talking about your kids growing up with it, and you're talking about, in a sense, the way it enriches your life.
You're darn tootin'.
And
it also confounds my life because I always I think if you were gonna, am I gonna get myself in trouble here?
Woohoo!
Can we edit? Can we edit with all the people? Oh, all right. So I'll say it. If there's any one thing if there's any one thing that I could poke a hole in the way Tom taught tracking for me personally, right? For me is, maybe I felt like I needed to be good at all tracking situations everywhere of all animals and all things, right? Which honestly is my goal with tracking. I would love to be able to just like read the entire landscape, you know. And through time, it took me a while to learn that I needed to just start with one animal or one substrate or one, practice, whether it was, like you're saying, any of the basics, aging, gait patterns, dare we say it, pressure releases. Said it. I mean, said it, Brad.
Right. You did. And here's my take on pressure releases. I think there's not necessarily a reason to break them down as aggressively as he did in terms of the terminology, but the macro pressure releases are useful if the substrate will give them to you, and they're repeatable, and you can learn to see some cool stuff. Micro pressure releases, as much time as I did try and put into it, I've never found to be anything reliable that I could use, and I've never seen anyone reliably use them, and I would love to do, a blind test with somebody and have them say, well, because of this little grain-sized thing, I can tell X, Y, or Z, and put them through a test and see if they do better than just guessing in terms of accuracy, because I've seen a lot of people who are in a teacher role talk a lot of shit when no one could question them, but I've never seen it tested and succeed.
You're talking about quantifying something that in certain respects is only qualifiable, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like how can you count something that's not about counting? You know what I mean? How can you
I mean, if somebody's telling me I can tell if an animal's male or female, that is a B situation. Sometimes there's a C, but it's really rare.
Get yourself and get you. Now we're gonna get some views for that one. What's
C? We're talking about animals.
C? Is that? I'm talking about. Well, hey, what are you talking about?
As my philosophy
me, am I not an animal?
In college
am I not an animal right here? Look at me. Woo!
A zebra on the plain. Is the fisher cat male or female? Right?
What? There's a choice. Why isn't there a choice, Brad?
If the fisher cat is male or female, and you can tell me that from the pressure releases, that should be a repeatable thing that you can say, because of this thing I'm seeing, I know it's male, and you should be able to do that 9 times out of 10, or at least more than 50-50.
When are the opportunities that you're not going to be able to tell that from the gait pattern?
I mean, you're going to be able to tell that from track size because there's sexual dimorphism, and male fisher cats are twice as big as female fisher cats, but if you take an animal that has similar size, even white-tailed deer, I've seen white-tailed deer females that have a 3.2-inch long front foot. And I've seen bucks that are big bucks that have a 2.75-inch long front foot. So what I want to, if somebody's telling me buy the micro pressure releases, not gait, I can see there's a really wide spread between the fronts that's over 8 inches and that's consistently showing up. That thing's carrying a heavy neck and a rack in its front, right? Or not, hey, that's a female that's pregnant with twins. Her rears are wide and pointed out and dragging. And it's springtime and she's pregnant with twins. Or pee in a bed. That's a reliable way. If the pee is going into the middle of the bed, it's a male. If it's going onto the edge of the bed, it's a female. Yep. Right. Those things are reliable, but I'm talking about I've been told because of this grain or half of a grain of rice-sized pockmark in this track, I can tell it's male or female. But I've never seen anyone want to put their money where their mouth is and line up 20 people and have them walk through a tracking box without them looking, and then they go up to the box and say which one is male or female and be more accurate than someone who's just guessing.
So, I I guess my feelings on it are that I don't really care if somebody is qualified to pass a test for me. I care about if I can see that. And I might not be able to see that every time, but like that's how I quantify it. What do I care if somebody else can or can't do that, right?
Well, if
because
they're going to tell me that I can learn
because
or that they can do it.
Because I'm always going to question. So I'm always going to question if I can't see a track, and then there's somebody who says that they are better than me and can see the track. I can always question. I can always be like, "Where's your piece of paper? Here, where's your piece of paper to show me that that there is a track in this place where I can't see it, but the animal went there, and you know the animal went there." Right? That situation's going to happen to everybody. Everybody's always going to be wrong on tracking from time to time. Like, I don't.
I guess I'm not.
What
I'm
I see.
interested
What I see.
in how
What
I
I'm
can
saying.
use
What
the
I'm saying
tool.
is. I think you can only answer that by doing it religiously and like believing that it's a tool. And if you don't believe that it's a tool and you don't use it, fine. Boom. It's no longer a tool. You don't have to use it.
Right,
but if somebody's using a tool, but if somebody's using a tool that you don't understand, what does it matter if somebody else is like, "Oh no, they can do it. Oh, I passed this test," or they passed the test.
Here's
what if they fail that? What if they fail the test, but not on a reason that you can say why they failed the test?
Here's what I'm saying.
You see what I mean? If I can't see it,
but here's
what
I'm saying,
telling me that I see it. You see what I mean?
If this person is claiming that this is a thing that works reliably, but they can't actually do it, that to me is the trick. And I don't want to waste my time on something that is impossible. And so something like learning to tell a species through morphology, what is the shape of the foot, how many toes does it have, claws, no claws, fur, no fur, right? All these things that we can all 10 people standing in a circle can all look at and agree to, right? If it's not learnable to the average person, then I don't see it as that useful to me, because I'm not interested in like a grandiose thing that maybe if I pray enough and sit on the hill enough that maybe I'll be able to learn someday.
Are you saying that you want to be akin to an average person, Brad? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
I'm saying I want repeatable,
you want to be the
useful
average person?
Tools. Yes, I want to be someone who can track
you want to be
reliably.
I
want skills that work. And that's, to me, there is a point with tracking where it became to me not about what anyone else could do, but what could I make work reliably. And I had to throw away lots of things that had been taught or told that I'd been told worked, and say, yeah, maybe that person could do them, but I have not seen any evidence that even with many years of study or practice, anyone I know can do. And so I'm going to stop the pursuit of those things, and I'm going to worry about, can I actually draw the front and rear track of every animal in my bioregion from memory?
So are you saying it's not possible? That it's not possible that there can be a specific small pock that's in an animal's track that indicates to you that is that animal's gender, that you just don't believe that actually is true, that's not possible to ever see
through landscape distortion and substrate differences. I don't believe that I have seen any evidence that would be the case
without qualifiers.
So what I'm saying is, like,
landscape. I'm just asking if you think it's. I'm just asking if you think it's possible.
Not in a reliable
like within
way.
the realm so it's not possible.
Not in a reliable way, no.
So is gait
not
pattern
in a useful way.
Is gait pattern like, is that infallible?
Gait
if every other part of it
is very, very studyable.
But is it going to vary?
gaits vary, but we can all look at it and work it out and agree on it and see it, and that you don't have to like achieve some. It's hard. It's like, can I read ancient Greek? No. But could I learn to read ancient Greek from people who know? Yes.
I don't think it's as simple as ancient Greek, though. If it was that simple, a lot more people would be really good trackers, and that's the hard part, right there. So all I'm saying is I believe it is possible. I believe that there is an indication in the foot of every animal that makes a mark in the ground that indicates that it's male or female.
Then show me, bro.
What's that?
Show me.
It doesn't mean that I can do that.
Oh. So we're taking this on faith. I have never said to somebody, this is a female because of this rice grain size pock in the ground. Those words have never come out of my mouth once. So I've never claimed to be able to do that, but that doesn't mean that I don't think it's possible and that the study of it is useless. I think it's more than possible. I think it's like highly likely to be, more infallible once you learn it. Here's why it matters to me.
See, this is why I should have studied.
I've seen people's learning be stunted by the pursuit of these things.
Was it stunted?
Yes.
Did it make them worse? It made them worse. It made them worse trackers.
It's my belief that more people would be better trackers if people spent their time.
Did it make them worse? Did it make them worse?
Yes, because they spent their time
trying to learn
things. Yes. Because I think people spend. Yes.
How can you tell? How can you?
Because I've seen people give up because they couldn't do the impossible thing. I've seen people.
Well, that's their choice.
Focus on the impossible thing and not get the real things done that we can all see, that we can all agree on, that we can all work our way through. And I think more people would be better trackers if everybody was more upfront and honest and straightforward with what the most useful elements of tracking are and how to go about learning them.
Yeah, I don't think we disagree about what you just said.
Sure.
I don't disagree with that.
We agree about where the far lines are.
What I mean, no, you're saying we agree on where the far lines of it, that it is possible.
No, that's where we disagree, is you have some things that you take on faith that I have lost faith in.
Oh, okay. Well, a lot of things are taken on faith. I mean, do you believe that there is such a thing as an atom? Personally, is there an atom?
It's not useful to me because I don't do atomic physics.
But do you believe in it? Do you believe it's true?
I believe that there would have to be an awful lot of lying going on for it to not be true.
No, that can't happen. Sorry. Whoa,
I believe that there is evidence of it based in the fact that there's nuclear reactors that are making energy that.
Just answer the question, Brad.
Yes, I believe in the atom.
So nobody's ever seen one, so certain things are taken on faith all the time. There's certain things that are taken on faith all the time. What is ridiculous about believing that it's possible that your footprint could make an impression in the ground because you were a certain way?
I didn't say it was ridiculous. I said it was not useful to me.
So there you go. That's your choice. And I don't think it stunted
because
you
I
as a
haven't
tracker.
seen evidence that
but I
I
don't think
could learn to do that.
I don't think it made you a worse tracker. I bet it made you a better tracker. That's
I would have been
argument.
a better tracker sooner.
I think it can make you a better tracker.
I would have been a better tracker sooner if I had focused on more realistic goals
on
in tracking.
All of it. I think if you focus on all of it, you'll be a better tracker faster. You study all the gait patterns, you study all the clear print, you draw all those prints and know them by heart. You study, all the aging, you study all the different sign, everything. Large scale sign, medium scale sign, small scale sign. You practice like however much you can stand a day of looking at pressure releases, like the macro ones that are obvious to everybody, the smaller ones that are like you can tell something happened with its foot here, but you're not quite sure because you're not that good at it. And even staring at some stuff where I'm like, I can't see shit about this that's useful. I think I still gain as a tracker from doing that. All of those things.
Okay, but
I don't think it's like chasing a rabbit hole. I don't believe that, because I think if you do all of them, then you encounter each of those when you're following an animal through the woods. Because sometimes it's really fucking hard. It's clear, it's clear, it's clear. Well, shit, it's clear over there, but why can't I see it here? Like, where is it? There should be blood right here. Why isn't there blood right here? The animal was bleeding. Fuck is going on?
Compression tracking and trailing is a different thing. That to me is just, it's a skill, and there is an edge at which that skill is useful or not in terms of the conditions and your experience level. That's different to me than micro pressure releases. And
agreed.
To me, I have seen people in a teaching position at colleges in my area who were teaching tracking to beginners and having them draw in micro pressure releases, and it was fucking nonsense. And those people couldn't even identify which tracks were my tracks and which tracks were the bear tracks that they were supposed to be drawing the micro pressure releases of in pine needles.
Well, that's why you should be teaching a college course on tracking, Brad.
This is not about me and my skill level. This is about me seeing somebody proclaim to 40 college students that not only could they see the micro pressure releases, but that the students could, and that they should be drawing these things into their track drawings. And it was just these people don't even know that a bear's big toe is its pinky. Like, they don't even know the first fucking thing. They don't know that they walk in an overstep walk.
Well, there's a lot of bad professors in a lot of different professions. I'm not defending anybody. What I'm saying is, I'm just saying I don't think it makes you worse if that's what you choose to study. If you're not choosing to study that, if I'm in a college course if I'm in a college course and I'm learning tracking, and like I'm not sitting in that class. Like, why can't I as a student be like, hey, I just want to see some deer tracks and how to follow them after shooting them, right? Like,
but here's the thing, man, is like,
I'm not defending that
somebody,
person. But
what I'm talking about is not that person,
say what it is.
The way that we as teachers approach tracking in terms of what we teach does matter. And so to me, it's like, if I'm teaching flint napping,
agreed.
I want to start people with trying to flute Clovis bifaces, or do I want to start them with basic flake dynamics? And,
exactly. And that's why it is ridiculous to teach a college tracking course and start with that. I do not disagree with that.
And so that's really my point, is that if people have gotten to the point where they've exhausted clear print ID, gait study, sign tracking, aging, and trailing, and then they want to move into advanced pressure release studies, go for it. But until you have mastered those basics, I don't think it makes sense for people to be spending time.
Those basics never end. There's no, like, you say that's the basics. I don't even think that's ever.
They don't end, but there's getting to a solid level of proficiency. Like, gaits still confuse me all the time, but I know the baseline gait of all the animals who live around me. I know what their slow gait is and what their top speed gait is. I know what it looks like when they turn around. I know what it looks like when they sit. You know, those are achievable goals that are proficiency based.
Yep.
So
there you go. You're being goal-oriented here, and I'm all enjoyment-oriented here. I'm gonna have to go.
In terms of that,
totally,
I will say that. So here are the things
lighting.
That I think.
Oh, you get the last word? No fair.
Are you in total darkness?
Pretty close. I'm pretty much in total darkness. There's gonna be no show and tell on this one. Look at that.
You can't
Look
hold a light up or something. You can't.
Brad is using fancy editing tools right now to win this argument. He's dimming me down so you can't see me. It's only my voice that's in this. This conversation needs to be over. God,
here's what I'll say.
What am I doing?
I do believe that tracking.
So I get last word.
Sure, but here I'm going to say something first. Tracking to me, outside of the technical shit I've been talking about, to me it's a study of applied awareness where you notice little details about the world and then ask questions about it. That I will say, Tom's methodology for teaching was fucking brilliant and has impacted my life in innumerable, very valuable ways in terms of his whole mentality of the sacred question of what does mean or what does this mean? Being able to notice something about the world and then ask the question brings you to a greater sense of awareness and makes your world more enriching and gives you infinite mysteries and questions to study and makes you learn way more about what's going on around you. And so that shit was brilliant. And also, there's a part of me that feels like the micro tracking or the micro pressure releases or some of the tracking mice on moss is just a way of tricking people into laying on the fucking ground and staring at the ground for hours on end because it's good for them for other reasons. It's not, to me, beyond Tom to have done that, being they're going to get good things out of this, and I don't care if I have to do a little hey, you're focusing on this when I'm actually giving you this. I wouldn't put that beyond him at all. So, to me, I don't not value the time I spent looking at micro pressure releases or tracking in substrates that I would consider to be impossible. And so, I take a lot of value in all of that, but I don't, I don't necessarily see it as all with the goal that it was said that it had. That's my final thoughts.
I don't feel I think it's hard to feel goal-oriented with tracking, personally, because no matter how far you go into that goal, you're always going to find something that wasn't there before. You might have to look 1,000 times, 10,000 times, to see that change, right? But no matter how good you're going to get, there's always going to be something more on the horizon because it is applied awareness, right? So what can you possibly, as a human being, be aware of? There's a whole lot of things you can be aware of if you put the time into being aware of them. And there's lots of different ways to be aware of them. And so yes, as far as a goal, the only realistic goal with tracking is increased awareness. That's the only real goal with it. Other than that, I don't see, for me personally, that you can have a goal, right? I want to be the best hunting tracker there is, right? Well, the animal's always going to do something different sometimes, and so, yeah. As much as I hate some of the disciplines in tracking, I try to spend time doing all of them, every single one of them. Even if I use this one 90% of this time and use this one 1% of the time, with these other ones spread out in there, it all makes you a better tracker. And yeah, that's about it. It's too dark here. This has to be over. Look at you. He snuffed me out completely, ladies and gentlemen. Snuffed me out completely.
When I come there in 3 weeks, we're going to go Home Depot and get some $10 lights and set you up with a lighting setup. There's so many people where the lights are. Yeah, I'm sure people are hearing all the screaming in the background. No matter where I go with lights, there's people there right now. So I'm hiding in the corners. Word. Well, or I guess I could get a battery-operated light. But anyway, I'm glad I won this argument. I'm glad that I won it. So We didn't even get into some of the things I wanted to, so
I'm sure we don't.
we'll have to make a debate.
See, now people
series.
can't see my facial expressions, but if you could see them, you'd be laughing at Brad right now. You'd be like, "What? Damn, yeah, dude, can't see him."
Right.
Oh, all right. Well, you don't like that, Brad. You see,
I don't.
this was what I was going to
don't
show
like
you was
this.
my tanned muscles, from being active today instead of talking.
I can tell
to the damn
actually by looking
machine.
at your tracks that your
What?
muscles are very weak.
What? You can't even see right now. You can't see this right now.
Oh, I
my
can see the
God,
tracks.
my
They're
muscles
glowing
are very
to me.
weak. Whatever.
You need
This
to,
is it. It's over. No, it's
you need
over.
to track more, bro.
It's over. Conversation
It's over.
over. That's it.
All right.
Goodbye.
Good night.
Goodbye.